Hi all, this is Steph Giordano with Human Services Research Institute, or HSRI. Welcome to our fourth and final module for the National Core Indicators Refresher Training for 2016-17. In this final training, we're going to review Section 2 of the Adult Consumer Survey. Final reminder here, this is a refresher training intended for those of you who have been out in the field in previous years and are familiar with the survey. We do have available information and materials for those of you who are newer to the project. So some kind of basics for conducting Section 2 of the survey. First, it's a natural breaking point in the survey, so offer the person a break to get up, stretch their legs, get some water if they want. A reminder that you can use proxy respondents for this section. Some individuals may want a person available just in case they are unsure of some answers. These questions are a bit more objective, particularly when we ask those questions around community inclusion, trying to get at how many times a person's gone out to do an activity in the past month. Sometimes people want assistance in remembering those exact numbers. You may have a proxy respondent complete all of Section 2 if the person was unable to complete Section 1. The person may also choose after Section 1 just to have somebody else do Section 2 for them, and that is okay as well. Again, we do always want the person to be answering as much as possible, though. When you do have a proxy respondent, we want to ensure that the proxy is somebody who knows the person really well and knows the person's daily activities. Oftentimes, this will be a person's family member or staff person. We do not allow for case managers to serve as proxies just for issues of conflict. And we want to make sure that throughout Section 2, you check off that respondent who's responding to each question. We have that respondent box that you all are probably very familiar with. Okay. All right, without further ado, let's get into these questions in Section 2 of the Consumer Survey. So we start out with these questions on community inclusion. These are those questions that try and get at the frequency of the person's participation in integrated activities in the community, meaning that we're looking for activities the person may be taking part in that occur around people without disabilities. It may be that the person is going with a friend or with a group of people with disabilities to do these activities, but as long as it's an integrated setting, we do count that as community inclusion. You may also want to let the person know not only what we're looking for here in terms of integrated activity, but the flow of these questions as how many times you've done a particular activity, and then who you typically go with. Skipping over to question 52, do you participate as a member of community groups in your community? This is a question that we added last year. This is any sort of formal or informal group that takes part in the person's community, as long as it is an inclusive setting. So it can be a church group, it can be a book club, it could be a pickup baseball game with a group of people in the community that the person typically does on Saturdays. So it doesn't necessarily have to have an awful lot of structure, but what we're looking for is that the person is really integrated into the community and the members at large. For this question, we are only looking for a yes or no response. We don't need the frequency of participation, but we do still want to know who the person typically participates with, and that doesn't mean who are the people who are in that group, but who is the person going with to attend that group. Then we ask about entertainment. Going out to a restaurant or coffee shop. This means going in and sitting down at a restaurant or a coffee shop to have a meal, not going through a drive-through and then heading home to eat. That's about going to religious or spiritual service, and then going away on vacation. And this here is, again, just a yes or no response. It is in the past year if the person's gone away on vacation. And I do want to note here that we are looking for the person leaving their home overnight as counting as a vacation. And then we get to questions about choices. Again, this has been largely unchanged. A reminder on these instructions. So for each of the questions in the choices section, we have 3 different options. We have that to response, which is the person played a major role in making the decision. The 3 responses that the person had some input in making a decision but did not play a major role. So maybe a person gave that individual 1 or 2 options to choose from. The person got to say yes or no. And then 1 is that the person did not have any input in making the decision. I should also mention that for that 2 response that the person made the choice, that includes if the person has a spouse who they're making decisions with. So questions 62 and 63 are about where the person lives, so if they chose their home and their roommates. This question will be marked not applicable if the person lives in their family home. We have the question about whether the person decides their daily schedules, how to spend free time. They chose what they do during the day, so if they chose where they work, and if they chose where they go during the day. Really specifically, we're looking at going to a day program or other activity. And if the person chooses to buy what they're spending money, I just want to note here that middle response is that the person has help choosing what to buy, but also that the person maybe has set limits for what they can spend. Question 69 has changed this year because we know from a number of states, not all, people really are not choosing their case manager at all, but they can request to change their case manager. So we changed this to ask, can you change your case manager if you want to? Question 70 is, as it has been in the past, do you choose or pick your staff? Here, if the person says, no, I did not choose my staff, we want to follow up and find out if they're able to change their staff if they want to. For both questions 69 and 67, we do want you to be really delicate about how you ask the question. For 70, that follow-up question, to make sure that people don't feel like they have to choose or change their case manager or staff for any reason, or if they answer in a particular way, that their case manager or their staff will be switched on them. We have a few more questions about rights here, largely around, or a couple of questions that we added having to do with some new HCBS regs. So do you have a key to your home? Can you lock your bedroom if you want to? If the person lives alone, this is going to be a not applicable. Question 73 is whether the person ever participated in a self-advocacy group, meeting, conference, or event. This is a spot where we find if you have some names of self-advocacy organizations in the area, it is really helpful for the person to better understand what you're asking. Question 74 is whether the person has ever voted, and that's in a local, state, or federal election. For both questions 73 and 74, we have that middle response, which is if the person says no, you're going to follow up and ask if they ever had the opportunity to take part in either voting or a self-advocacy group, but chose not to participate. We asked questions about access to needed services. As I mentioned in the background information video, these questions about possible additional service needs line up to that question in the background information section. This question, I want to note, is going to take you a little while to get through. We want you to read through each of these response options and ask if the person needs the service or needs additional services and supports around any of these issues. We do have or try to have some definition around what we're asking here. In our interviewer guide, which I've referenced a few times now, we do have a few additional definitions. You and your state may have some state-specific examples that can be used as well. This is also a spot where if the person had mentioned earlier on that perhaps they want to find somewhere else to live, you can bring up that earlier conversation to help try and ask these questions as well. Question 76 is whether the person feels the staff have the right training to meet their needs. Just a note, as always, if the person who's responding is a proxy respondent and that person is this person's staff, you're going to check off that 99 response. We have a couple of questions about health and wellness that were brought over from the background information last year. So overall, how would you describe your health? This again is one of those spots where you can go ahead and read off the response options here. And then we want to know if the person does exercise or physical activities, and if so, how frequently. Finally, we get into our self-directed supports module. You should know based on pre-survey and background information whether the person is taking part in self-directed supports. If not, then you're going to skip to the very end, thank the person for their participation, ask if they have any questions, and you'll be done with the survey. If they are doing using self-directed supports, you're going to go ahead and ask at least these first two questions here. Who makes decisions about how your budget for services is used? And do you participate in decisions about how to use your supports budget? These two questions are essentially qualifiers to determine whether you're going to ask the remaining questions, which are all about decisions being made for self-directed supports. So we really only want to ask these questions of people who are in fact taking part in that decision making. So if somebody other than the individual who's answering, so the individual or proxy respondent, takes part in decision making, again, you would jump to the end of the survey, thank the person for their time, and you'd be done. If the person responding does take part in the self-directed supports decisions, you would go ahead and ask these few questions, which we try to clarify a bit in order to make this a little bit easier to get through. So we ask whether the person hires and manages their staff, which is, of course, a main tenet of self-direction. Whether the person's able to make changes to their budget or services if they need to, and if they have enough help deciding how to use the service, the budget for services, The last few questions here about information the person may get about information that's left in, or about information about the money that's left in the budget. In this here, if the person gets information, we're going to ask then, is the information easy to understand? And how often the person is receiving information. And that takes us to the end of the self-directed questions. Finally, for you, you're going to indicate all of the people who answered section 2, although we do know that this may feel a little bit redundant because you're checking off that respondent box for each question. It does give us an idea of anybody who may be taking part in the survey. That respondent box will only allow you to check off one respondent type. And so it's really helpful for us at HSRI as well as states to know all the people who are supporting to get through the section 2. Finally, we have the surveyor feedback sheet, which I mentioned a bit ago. This is just information that is helpful for us to relay to states to know how long it takes to complete the survey, how long it takes to collect some of the information, and really importantly, if there are questions in here in the survey that you found problematic, so maybe you thought it was asked in a kind of awkward manner, maybe the response options don't fit exactly how the person typically would answer a question. If you think that something is totally missing from the survey, that's what we're looking for here. And we do take these questions and comments very much under advisement as we look at making tweaks to the survey each year. And finally, we have a couple of additional questions about where the survey was held and what language it was conducted in, and how the survey was administered, meaning were you using paper, copy of the survey, laptop, netbook, etc. And that takes us to the very end of the adult consumer survey. I want to thank you all again for going through this refresher training with me. Good luck in your surveying this year, and please always do feel free to contact us at HSRI with any questions that you may have. Thanks so much. Bye.